making your own art is the best way to create the most cohesive experience, and to really ensure that your project is reaching the right audience, because the type of art also influences what type of audience you'll get. Here's an example of the assets I've made for Call of Chaos. Um, these have a very strong theme to them, and they're all very cohesive. They all sort of have this eldritch, kind of mystical,
Because,
magical
the
feel
type
to
of
them,
art,
and that was very much on purpose. And I was only really able to give them such a strong theme because I am the lead of the project, or one of the leads rather. Um, so I knew exactly the energy that I needed to channel going into making these assets. Um, yeah, next up, why art is useful is visualizing and motivation. So art obviously lets you visualize, um, but if you're a good artist, you can visualize efficiently and quickly, which is, in my opinion, really a really underrated tool when it comes to designing and creating any sort of content. Uh, you can have an idea in your head, and you can like think about it constantly. You can really figure out the details, but putting pen to paper and really just like drawing out your concept can help you. It'll give you a sort of an objective lens to look at the idea through, and that can really help you come up with ideas and solve problems with the concept. Um, it's an awesome tool. If you're like stuck with an idea and you're not sure, you're not really happy with it, you want to sort of um, workshop it. Making a concept is amazing. And also another point about making concepts like these is it'll also help you stay motivated, because if you're just doing the implementation, you're not worrying about art, you'll often end up kind of losing your motivation through the fact that like there isn't that magic to the work you're doing. I mean, of course, you're implementing stuff, it's working, you might get a lot of satisfaction from that, but really having assets or having like concept art to look at to like remind yourself this is the direction I'm headed in, and this is how this project is going to look like when it's finished. It can really help you stay motivated. So if you struggle with that, definitely do try doing some concept art or try doing assets during your development cycle. Um, it's a good idea. Next up, I want to touch on more about the sort of personal aspect of art and why you should also care about that. Well, simply art is fulfilling. Um, being able to express parts of yourself and be appreciated for it by others is amazing. It's a great feeling, and it can really help you with a lot of mental problems like self-confidence. It can help you feel validated if you have issues with that, and even help with feelings of being accepted. Um, it is truly, I really don't want to understate how good art can be for mental health. And from personal experience, it has helped me a lot with those sorts of things. If you struggle with them, I would really recommend you to uh, at least see if you're interested in getting into art. Um, next up, another thing that's really cool for you personally as art is that it has a pretty much infinite skill ceiling. Um if you really get into like an art form, you'll be able to explore that art form and really get better at it for your entire life. You will constantly have ways to improve, and that's awesome because, well, it gives you the opportunity to self improve for your entire life. It's a hobby that you have for your entire existence. like things you can specialize in. So consider, for example, item textures, or I guess in this case, it'd be just sprites. This is a form that is very similar to just like standard classic pixel art. You can do block textures, which will require you um, to learn sort of tiling and all these other techniques that are different from items. There's modeling in UV, which is a very broad topic. You can really spend a lot of time getting into models. And even stuff like UI sprites can be your specialty. But really, feel free to choose any of these things or even anything else. Like, I'm sure like particles could be considered an art form, like making stuff with particles or having different particle textures. Um, there's really, with Minecraft especially, there's so many different things you can do with art, that this is a really good medium to start with generally. But yeah, so choose your form, choose what you like doing the most, and here are some tools that you can use to get started. Blockbench. I mean, I think this is the de facto tool for making Minecraft models. It has a very nice UI. It's very simple. Yeah, something that is kind of essential, I think, and that a lot of you probably already know if you do anything with models. Sprite, amazing tool for pixel art. It does cost money, but it really has everything you will ever need as a pixel artist. And not just for Minecraft, just for anything. So it's also good in terms of like being able to branch out in the future if you don't just want to do Minecraft stuff. PaintNet is a great free alternative to Asprite. It's something that I've used all this time and still do. It's not specifically tailored to pixel art. It's more of a photo editing tool, but it has tons of plugins that you can install that will, that will help you do more pixel art stuff, I'm sure. It is also a pretty nicely designed tool. It has a pretty simple UI, easy to learn. Miners need cooler shoes. Not just that. I mean, this is a tool, I believe, by Max Valek. I don't know if they're in the audience right now, but yeah. This is where Kyrius started making their skins, which is cool. And it's a very like rudimentary, very simple tool, but it's incredibly accessible. And it is a great place to start with making skins, in my opinion, if you don't want to bother with Blockbench. You have VS Code, which is really nice for just like dealing with resource packs and managing your projects. And there's also GitHub, which is great for any sort of collaborative work. Also, making sure you have backups of your work in case your hard drive explodes or something. So yeah, these are the tools. You can obviously use whatever you want, not just these things. If something works for you, then that's great. Use that. You'd even be able to use Paint 3D. Oh, well, maybe not. Well, I guess we crashed. In that case,
yeah.
I'll hand over the mic to Kyrius.
Yeah. Let's see if we can get this back up again. It takes so long to start this one. All right. So, yeah, let's get into a bit of color theory and a bit of the tools and tips you can use to really improve your skills. Because so far we've gone through basically why you should do art and how you can begin. But now I really want to get into how you can improve, what kind of tools you can use, and how you can get into the medium. So seeing here, this is my old skin that I used to have. It's a skin that I evolved on over time and really built upon for years and years. But an opportunity struck me when I made this skin, and I just chose I need to switch. This is just so much better. Because over the years, I had developed new tools and new ideas on how to work with colors, and that's I think the main thing that makes my new skin better. I now know how to think with colors, And so the main first thing I want to get into is hue shifting. We'll also be going into sort of how to you can pick nice complementary colors and more. But the hue shifting example is, I think, the biggest thing I want to go into. So to begin, I have this example over here with this skin I made once. You can see the big difference you get when you know a bit of the color theory behind these things, because you can see how much more lively the right side example looks than the left. And this is exactly what I'll be teaching you guys how to do in the next slide. So to begin, here's 3 examples of different palettes. On the left side, we have a palette with no variation in either hue or saturation. So to begin to explain these terms a little bit as well, hue is what we call color. Saturation is how strong the color is, how like vibrant it is. And value is how dark it is, basically. So in the left example, you can see how it just goes from light but saturated to dark but saturated. No change in anything. The middle example is a little bit better. It at least turns up it makes the lighter colors less saturated, so they're more white. But the right side example is the one that really makes it all come most alive and makes it hue shifted properly. So up at the top here, you can see some examples on how this palette could be used. And now I'll be going into how you can think about this. So let me bring this color wheel up. What we think of as artists with colors is basically kind of their brightness and also their temperature. But I think how light the colors are is the most important part of this example. Light colors usually lean more yellow. With sunlight, basically, if we think of normal lighting on Earth, we have yellow sunlight. It's a bit yellow. And dark tones are usually associated with more bluer colors, purple tones. So when making a color palette, a really good tip is to basically lean your light colors towards yellow and lean your dark colors towards blue. That helps a lot of things with making palettes really pop and really make them make sense. So here on this color wheel, you can see basically 2 ways you go from yellow to blue, and how the lightest color, basically yellow, goes through either the cool tones or the warm tones to blue, to black. Maybe this is a bit yappy, but the point I'm making is that when you're picking a palette, try to find yourself on this color wheel somewhere. Let's say I want to make a green palette, for example. I pick a lightest color that is more close to yellow than the darkest color, which is more close to blue. The side examples here don't have any variation in hue from the colors that they're associated with, but they're only darker or lighter. And so this is something I hope can really help you guys find better colors. Here's a little example I want to get into as well. Thinking about black and whites, they don't really fit into this example. How do you hue shift a black or white palette? They're kind of difficult. But what you kind of got to think of in those cases are, instead of thinking about the light and darks with the yellows and blues, you sort of just got to undertone them. A gray palette that has a bit of a yellow or blue undertone can be a big difference in making it feel a lot more lively, making it feel a lot more properly lit. Because looking at the first example here, it just feels so sterile and weird. If you saw that in context, it wouldn't really look any good. So when you do a gray palette, try to add a little bit of undertones to it. So in this example, the dark colors have a bit of yellow in them. They feel a bit yellow. It makes them feel earthy. Makes them fit into the maybe like a rock or something. The blue tones here make it feel very clean, very sterile, which can be very nice if you want a very clean shirt or something. It also very much depends on what material you're making, with what color you choose, and especially for grayscale colors, they can vary a lot in what undertone you want to use. For example, a clean like set of clothing could be blue undertoned, but maybe some rusty metal could have a bit of like a red undertone. Either way, oh, someone's calling? Hello? Oh, I can't find my phone. Oh, hello? Yeah? No, I'm in the middle of a panel right now. I'm sorry, I can't really speak to you right now. Um, no, 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 sorry, yeah. I gotta go. Oh, whatever. So what I was saying, what was I saying? Mm, anyway, colors are really interesting, and there's so much more I could say about them. And I think it's such an interesting topic that really lets you get somewhere with all this. And so I won't be able to go through every single thing about colors in this panel. So I'd like to defer to Gnace, or Nice Name, as his YouTube channel is called. I think is Nice Name in the audience? Maybe. He usually finds himself into these audiences. And so I really, really recommend you guys to check out his YouTube channel. It's got a bunch of great videos on color theory, and especially how it relates to Minecraft. He's also got a booth over there somewhere in the forest, which I very, very much recommend. There's so many videos and so many things, and this really goes into the technicalities of color. And I think you can learn a lot from it. But it's not only Gnace's content, of course. There's definitely lots and lots more resources out there online. And I can't stress it enough how useful they are in getting an understanding of this. Because just doing it by trial and error can be fun, but seeing why it makes sense really, really helps. So yeah, let me just close these windows down. And yeah, next topic, lighting. I'm going to talk a little bit about how to think about drawing your textures, how to get them to really feel like the shapes they're meant to be. So in these examples, I really want to outline something with light, and that is how we think of it. That's kind of clear. But that light comes from above in most cases in models. For an ambient light situation, you usually think of outdoor lighting, maybe indoor lighting, where the lights are really coming down from above. And so you can see an example of this little mushroom guy, how he's got a shadow under the cap, or how the slime is a lot lighter on top with the highlights going on top of it. In Smithy, for example, you can see how the top of Smithy's head is a lot lighter than the bottom. And these are things that are quite clear and obvious, but can really, really help you to make you the right shape of your model so that it doesn't look underlit or something and a bit weird, and the shape might look incorrect. Because especially in the medium that we're working in Minecraft, you got to try to simulate a lot of shape in the texture. So here I have a little example about how to get a uniform lighting. You see this block on the left? It's got some weird shadows going on, where all of the side faces are lit from the left side, and the top face is lit from the corner. But when you put these faces together, they don't really make sense. The light has no proper angle, and it just sort of... it looks fine, but it looks inconsistent. In the right example, the light is coming straight from above, and it's uniform on all the sides. And I think, personally at least, and this is definitely a style decision, can very much help you make a coherent shaped model. But these rules, as I touched upon a bit, aren't super obvious and clear in all cases. A lot of times in Minecraft, you have these blocks, such as a diamond block, represented here by this red block, that don't really follow this order. The edges don't really align, and it just is kind of fine like that in Minecraft. But it's at least something to think about, because it does matter in making a model coherent. So I've got two little examples here. I think one of these kids might be out in their audience. I'm not really sure. See if you can find them. So yeah, on the left side here we got one of Jachro's older skins, and on the right side we got Michael Modulo's skin, who's on right now, I believe. Excuse me. And so some things that I spotted in these skins that you can think about as little references on how to think about light and how to think about corners and edges more in general is how on the left side here, you can see how the corners don't really align, and there's parts of it that are darker next to lighter pixels over the corners. And if you were to think about what that represents in real life, it might be a little bit confusing. But some things, you can have corners on, for example, at the top of the head, where the hair goes, where it sort of makes sense. There's a shape that's being portrayed by it. And this is very much a style decision, and I could yap on about this for quite a while. But the point I'm trying to make is that consider your corners and edges and think about how is the light and the materials really behaving around these corners. And I think light especially. How is the light interacting over the corners? When I make textures, such as in this case on the right side, I basically think of my textures as made of voxels, as made of little cubes. So all of the faces that go around a corner are always the same. I think that's an easy tip to use. If you want to make your own texture, you can try to copy the side texture onto the other side, over the corner, over the edge, and continue texturing. That lets you sort of have the consistent shading that goes across, instead of it just looking weird, like in the previous example of the like light blue block thing. Um, so yeah. Another thing with lighting, I think, which is basically a whole nother subject, is items. But it very much touches on the same ideals of what I've already touched on. With items, you don't have the privilege of clear defined edges. You kind of have to make them up yourself. So in the left side example here, you see this little shape. It's got this very clear, organized tetrahedral. No, that's not what it's called. Octahedral shape to it. That has very defined shapes. But so without the actual 3D shape, we try to imitate that by drawing it as if it was. Maybe it's a bit unclear, but the point I'm making basically is try to consider your model or whatever, or your item, I mean, your object, as made of unique shapes. Then try to make those shapes with lines. A tip I can make as well is to try to pick shapes that are easily recognizable, such as circles, squares, triangles. When you delve into more complicated shapes like weird oblong ovals or maybe like a pentagon, it's hard to get the angles to really feel clear and defined in this very low resolution medium. So try to pick shapes that are very clear and then define your model or your object into those shapes and then start drawing from it. For example, this ball thing that looks a little bit like an eye. I mean, I thought of it as this like shape, as this circle, and then I tried to draw out of that. So yeah, it can be very interesting. Basically, items, and they're a whole different subject, which I think all of these topics I could go in on forever to talk about. But moving on, we have shaping, and this is shaping for models. Something you gotta think about in Minecraft is to try to lower the amount of cubes you're using. It can really help to make your models clearer, because when you're making a model and just spamming it full of cubes, it's really not the texture coming through, but it's just the shaping. And at that point, you're just doing sculpting and not texture work anymore. And so in these examples, I tried to lay out how the texture really carries the shape you're trying to provide. Look at for example, the little weird pink guy with the black hair. It's a hound from the back rooms. But the back leg has got this texture to it that looks as like it's almost a bent leg that with a knee and everything, though it's just made of one cube. You can also see the like bat thing at the top, how the wings have got these like veins and parts in them like that are like shiny and lit. But this is actually just one flat cube, right, for every part of the wing. And so that shape that comes through, it's just made of flat bits. And I think this comes through the clearest in this candelabra model, in how that texture that you see of like, or like that shape, it's just one flat sheet. It's just one flat sheet with texture on it. And that provides all of the shape necessary. And that is the point I'm trying to make, is try to lower your cube counts when modeling and really try to think about the lighting angles and the shapes that you're using and make it out of that. And I think another good example here is the inconspicuous butt crack on the big Mojai statue. Basically, the point being that it's a big flat face. Try to texture it with shape instead of making it out of cubes. And then lastly, skins. They're basically their whole different type of art, and I can't talk about them enough. I love skins, and it's basically my passion thing that I've been doing ever since I got into this medium. But what I want to touch on here specifically are the techniques you can employ in skins. And I think what skins have the most interesting opportunities in is its outer layer. It's a very unique concept, and it provides some very interesting opportunities. We could look at, for example, these purple boots and how the like shoelaces at the bottom are really thin. And that's because the outer layer extends a little bit further out and provides ourselves an opportunity to see through the outer layer into the under layer, which allows you to make a lot of interesting shapes. You can also see the bi flag on Luz from the owl house over here, how there's a purple stripe going through the middle. That's also done by the outer layer, by offsetting the outer layer a little bit and drawing on top of it. You can also create very interesting shapes, like the boots over here, by using this technique. This allows you to sort of imitate bigger, more interesting cubes without actually adding any of them. As well as making weird angles, such as in the hair on this skin over here. You can see how the hair is angled in sort of a circular arc shape by using this outer layer. Obviously, this is a medium that is a never-ending source of inspiration and a never-ending source of techniques. So I hope this just shows you that there really are a lot of opportunities in how unique you make skins. And yeah, yeah. Let me see. Close these windows. So many. And yeah, I think I'll leave it over to Jachro again.
Thanks, Kyrius. Now I'm going to talk about a bit more meta topic, which is practicing. Every artist needs to practice, whether you like it or not. You really to progress your style and progress your abilities. You need to do these exercises. You need to actually do art. There's some examples here, such as over here. First one is a just an example of a practice in tiling with these kind of weird shapes. The next example is sort of combining random items. You can see over here, these are skins that Kyrius makes. These are specifically from a practice technique where they generate a random palette and design skin based off of it. And just kind of an overall sort of collage of assets, kind of a bigger project over here. These are all examples of ways you can practice, but how do you actually go about practicing? So my advice is to practice simple things and practice often. If you do really sort of if you do small stuff that you know how to make, stuff that you feel confident in, you can do a lot of practice, and or rather, you can do them in a short amount of time, which will let you do a lot of practice. Which we're talking about scale here, right? Right, like to get the most effect out of your time, you want to do the most things in that time. So it is just good to practice the things that you're good at and you know that you can do quickly. Or things that are simple to you. And as you progress, those simple things will slowly become more and more complicated. That is probably the most effective, quickest way to gain skill in art. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try bigger things. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try sort of like things that are out of your comfort zone, things that are a bit more difficult. Or stuff that you just straight up don't know how to do. But when tackling those things, be prepared to fail. Be prepared to be disappointed with the result, because that's the nature of doing difficult art, is that it may not, the results you're looking for will not always be the ones you want. But even with failed things, failed projects or failed sort of exercises, you still learn a lot, especially if they're to such a giant scale. It is very good to do these things, even if you fail, because as I said, you just gain experience from them, and next time you do them, you'll be able to be much better at them. Another thing to keep in mind in practice is to set goals for yourself. If you have something you've been wanting to do, or like a project you want to work on or make assets for, that is the best thing to practice with, because it'll keep you motivated. If it's something you want to do, something you find fun, that is what you should practice. No one likes to sit around for hours at a day drawing just like circles. That's boring. Instead, I don't know, draw like faces with circles, or do something fun. Do something that you view as a goal. Yeah. So that's the general idea when it comes to practice. Another thing that I'd like to touch on real quick is showcasing your art, sending it to Discord servers, asking for feedback. Asking for feedback in general is a very good way to learn. Um, Being receptive to constructive criticism and things. I mean, I think it's a pretty obvious piece of advice, but it truly does help to publish your art, even if it's not the greatest, even if you're not the most proud of it. Just do it. It's cool. People love seeing your art, and you will learn a lot from it. So for the next slide, I will give the mic back to Kyrius.
Yeah. So I really want to say this. Having talked over all of the things you should do in your art, I really also want to say that there's no one right way to do things. Here's just a couple of examples of models that we've made throughout our days that don't quite follow any of the rules that we've set out. You could, for example, look at these items and see they don't have a border like Minecraft items usually do. This cart over here does kind of overutilize some cubes. It's got like a lot of angle, like curved angles and 40 degrees. This dog, for example, this is something I didn't really touch on previously. It has a very, very low palette count, only 3 brown colors, where maybe it could have had more. Such as this concrete block, which has way too many colors from what is usual. The point is basically that even with those rules that we might have laid out, these models aren't incorrect, they aren't wrong, and they're completely valid actually. If you have a consistent vision that follows your own rules, that's perfectly fine. The point is just that you gotta make sure you have a consistent rule set. When making a project, try to keep your rules in line. So if you have one model that has a very low palette count, for example, try to make most of your models low palette count. Or if you're using these like over the top angles, maybe, you know, lean into that. Do more of it. But if you have only one model that stands out, it might look a little out of place. And so following these rules can be a very good way to learn the techniques necessary. But then the next step is definitely learning what rules to break to find your own style. And so that's what I want to get to next. But first, I gotta close all these windows. Ugh, there we go. Yeah, style. We have very distinct, different styles, Jachro and I. And if we were to work on the same project, we might have things we disagree on how things work. And I think that's totally fine. I've got a very saturated style with very high contrast between my colors. I like to use very few colors, like colors in my palettes. And in general, I'm just a big fan of like models, like mob models, skins. I love making skins. Oh, I could gush on about it. Whereas Jachro has a lot more of a desaturated style with a much more focus on like maybe realism. Maybe Jachro, you want to touch a bit on what defines your style?
Yeah, I tend to go with more desaturated colors. I like to do a bit more flat art, like sort of items and stuff, which you can see in certain parts of my models, like this little shape on the gas can. I don't do a lot of highlights as well. I tend to minimize the highlights, although maybe this is not the greatest of examples, but I go with a more matte approach to shading. And yeah.
Yeah. So to demonstrate this topic of style and that there's a big validity in your own style, whatever you really got going on is correct. And to set this in stone, I wanted to showcase a little experiment that Jachro and I did. We decided to do one of these practice techniques that I've been doing, where I go on coolers.co, which is a website that generates color palettes at random. And we looked through that for a while, and then we found this palette. We really, really like this one. And what we decided to do was that we would each make a skin like inspired by the same palette and see what difference we'd get. So, you guys want to see what we got? Drum roll, please. There we go. You can see these are two completely different skins based on the same palette concept, and how both of these skins ended up really looking very cool. This one over here is a more focus on like a more casual everyday clothes design, and Jachro's is like an alien with really colorful clothes. I really like what you came up with, Jachro. And so
Thanks.
the point here is to show how different these skins are and based on the same palette, and that there's no right and wrong here. They're both equally valid and cool, and anything else that could have been made would have been great as well. The point is really to feel the freedom in coming up with your own style and really experimenting with what you get. And so, yeah, I think that'll wrap up our discussion on pixel art. Let me just close these windows and let me turn off the computer. There we go. So yeah, thank you all for coming to the panel about pixel art.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll be doing a Q&A now.
I'm not sure who's collecting our questions. Do you know?
I don't know. Maybe
Hello.
RX is here?
Oh, hi, RX.
I'm collecting them. I was recording, so I couldn't watch chat, but now I can watch chat. Give
Okay.
me 1 second.
Awesome.
Do we have a Google
Yeah.
Doc?
Yes, I will be creating one really quick. Yeah.
Oh yeah, thank you,
thanks,
Keter. I will remember to return my phone call, for sure.
Thanks everyone for joining me for this panel. This is such a nice surprise from the Pixelart crew. All the amazing art on the server, amongst from a lot of other people as well. Kyrius and Jachro really drove the vision on those. So it was such an amazing process to watch these assets come to life as we were coming together the project. So I really want to shout out both Kyrius and Jachro again for putting together like all their knowledge together, just as like a window into the world of pixel art. So that was awesome.
Thank you so much. Means
Thank
a
you.
lot.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and read out some questions, seeing, and I'm getting the Google Doc going. But what are some recommendations for doing work for other people or finding work?
Maybe you take this one, Jachro?
Sure. So generally, I recommend starting out doing work for your friends. I think that's the best way because you'll get accustomed to working for other people first. And after that, you can sort of, I guess, advertise your work through platforms like, maybe not Twitter, but like Blue Sky, for example. Or even Discord or stuff. Generally, just advertising is important if you want to work for strangers. But yeah, get started with working for your friends, and yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Work on what makes you excited, and then don't view art as a job too much. It can definitely be
That's
a good
true.
job, but try to really make it about yourself, because it's your art after all.
Exactly.
What else do we have?
I got a question from Blockbot. Why should you top light blocks if Minecraft does lighting for you when you have 3D models? I guess where does lighting in pixel art and lighting in game kind of interact?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. I really like that question because it sort of touches on a lot of things. To begin, I'd say the Minecraft lighting system is kind of not that good. If you had shaders, it could be a whole different thing. But the thing is, with shaders, you'd basically get, if you didn't texture your blocks with lighting, you'd have completely blocky blocks that don't have any shapes in them, maybe no indents or no anything, which wouldn't really look that good, right? So what we try to do is sort of get around this kind of bad system or like very QB system, right? To sort of give off the effect that there's actually depth to the blocks, but maybe not. Maybe there isn't actually. Maybe that's a good answer. What do you think, Jachro?
Yeah. I mean, just in general, to be able to define shapes, you need to do shading on the actual texture, right? Because you will have parts of the block that are not displayed through the model. You need to be able to show them, and the only way you can show shapes is through shading.
Oh yeah, someone said in chat, if we had control over like normals, then yeah, that would be a whole different thing. But we can't control like normal maps in Minecraft as well, as far as I know. Maybe with complex shader magic, but yeah. I see a question. How many colors per gradient is best for Minecraft style? That's a good one. I think it's very subjective, right? Minecraft style, as much as it might sound like one thing, it is kind of internally inconsistent in a lot of ways. Some blocks have quite different paletting techniques than others, and some do all kinds of things. So there's definitely some answers I can give, but to some extent, it's very much your own decision. What I would say, though, is try not to go above like 7 colors in the same palette. If you're leading up to 10, it's going to start looking smudgy, at least if you have a small texture. If you have a bigger texture, maybe it's possible and maybe it makes sense. But I try to stick at least below 8 in all cases. Maybe for one color set. Obviously, if you have blue and green, you'd have 2 different color sets, each with 6 colors, for example. But I think 3 colors might be a bit too few, right? Like for the dog, for example, it looked very low palette count. Do you want to take one, Jachro?
Yeah. So I'll take, how long have you been doing pixel art, and how do you keep motivation, especially when seeing other people's art? So I've been doing pixel art since before I even like started doing pixel art for Minecraft. I remember when I was really young, I would take out like the like paper that's in math notebooks, and with the little squares, and then draw like Pokemon sprites on it. So that's how I got started with pixel art. But I mean, how long have you been doing pixel art, Kyrius?
I mean, yeah, pixel art, I think I've always loved like arts and crafts and stuff ever since I was a kid. And like going into Minecraft, that sort of translated immediately into wanting to make my own skin, right? And I think that's probably what I would say. As soon as I, got my Minecraft account, I was drawing my own skin. I had that interest in me already. And so I don't know exactly when I started, but pixel art's hard to define, but I suppose I'd start my pixel art journey when I got Minecraft.
Awesome, yeah. And then how do you keep motivation, especially when seeing other people's art? Try not to compare yourself too much.
Yeah,
in my opinion,
exactly.
What you make is like very individual to you, and it's very difficult to even compare your work to someone else's on even like a base quality level, because everyone spends time on different parts of art. Everyone's better at different different things. Like you can have a person that's better at shading. You can have a person that has a really good spatial imagination.
I would really compare this to like data packs and stuff. Like someone might be really, really good at world gen, but know nothing about how to make a PvP data pack. But both people are really good. Or like a PvP data pack person and a world gen person, they're really good at both making data packs just for different purposes or like different niches. And so I'd say if you're, let's say, a person who makes machine blocks as your whole data pack niche, and you're saying, I'm such a bad data packer because I can't make a puzzle. Like, they're not the same thing, right? Like, so it's very much try not to compare yourself to people, because everyone's niche is so individualized, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And for a little bit of just to continue answering this question, a little bit more practical advice. I think showing your art to people and getting feedback from others is a great way to stay motivated. As I mentioned in the slides earlier, visualizing making concept art is great for motivation. Yeah.
I think we had a panel the other day as well on how to start your own project, which was a great piece on motivation and such. But as Jachro said, I think having a goal and having the opportunity to show your progress to people really boosts your motivation. So you're not just sitting there working alone and not seeing any like positivity coming back.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Do you want to take another one?
See. Have you seen any high cube count models, like from mods with non-Minecraft styles, that you liked or were impressed by? Oh, for sure. Like high cube count stuff can be very impressive. I could mention, for example, the expansion, which has a booth over there, in like on the other side of the map. It's full of spaceships and stuff, and it's so cool. But it's so high cube count in a way that's not necessarily not Minecraft style, but it's very different from how Mojang would do it, and I think it's very, very cool. There's a lot of cool looking mods out there too. Like if you think back to like Thaumcraft back in the day, they had such a high resolution style and stuff that wouldn't fit into how Minecraft actually was meant to be if you think of it from Minecraft's perspective, but it still looked really cool. And I think the point here is that it's impressive by the merit of it being itself, and it doesn't have to be impressive by following someone else's rules. Following someone else's rules can help you fit in, which can be your goal sometimes. And trying to achieve that goal can be useful, or like having the tools to achieve that goal can be useful if that's your goal. But really coming up with your own thing can be very rewarding. And
Absolutely, yeah. I personally really like the Shingeki no Craft that has a booth over here. Their style is very high cube count, or it tends to be, and it's a very cool art style. And the way they do shading as well is like through these big blotches of shadow that kind of mimics the art style of the anime a little bit. I really like that approach. I think that's a great example of how you can do something different from Minecraft and still do it in a really good way. Okay. So what do you think about color picking from vanilla textures for item textures? I'd say go for it. Just don't try to be too strict with it.
Mhm. Yeah.
If I could, I wish I could like
You-
bring up models here for examples. But when I was
Try
working
it.
with,
To go back
Yeah.
if you want.
I don't think there are any textures that show what I'm thinking about. But when I was working with mechanization, I needed to do copper parts for certain machines, and I wanted to work with the vanilla copper palette. But I realized that that palette is massive and it's terrible.
Yeah,
It has so
the
many,
copper palette's bad.
yeah, it has so many colors that are just very similar to each other. So I modified it a little bit to make it a lot more workable with. And I recommend you do the same if you work with vanilla palettes. Adjust it to suit your needs, basically.
Yeah. I think the reason copper gets away with it is because you have a lot of colors, but on quite a big texture. A 16 by 16 block texture can fit a large variety of colors when it gradiates from light to dark. But if you're texturing a little like wrench or something, you don't need 15 colors. You need like 4, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
So cutting out a lot, and that can be useful. So yeah.
Do you want to take another one?
What's the ratio for gradients or just trial and error? Maybe what I'm taking from that is how do you assemble a good color palette, and how much like hue shifting should you do? How much difference should there be between the colors? An important point with that is to make sure that for pixel art, two like shades next to each other shouldn't be mistakable. You shouldn't see two shades next to each other and like not be able to tell where the border is. Colors should be defined as their own part of the palette so that it's easy to read as pixel art and really like make out the shapes. You could have a very like gradiated aesthetic and that might work, but for the Minecraft style at least, you got to make sure that the colors have a big difference between each other. But how saturated they are, how much hue shifting you do, that depends on what material it is. If you're going for a different style, you could go for a very like toned down low saturation style if you want, or you can go for a very cartoony high energy style. Like there's a lot of difference in how games even in general go for their like color styles and stuff. So how much hue shifting and stuff you do doesn't really matter as much as that you think about the hue shifting and think about what color the light is. Sort of mainly. And I think one more thing I want to say about like hue shifting and color palettes and stuff. What I said about light being yellow and dark being blue, that's a very good way to do textures in general, but it might not always apply. Imagine in a club setting where you have purple lighting. Maybe the light shades should be more purple and not yellow, for example. Or at midnight, you could have more cyan lights, where if you have a whole map that is at midnight, you could have cyan as the lightest color, the sort of moonlight color. The point is basically light is a bit subjective, but in general, try to go with like the yellow light and blue dark kind of vibes.
A great use case for what you're talking about, I think, in Minecraft is custom dimensions.
Oh yeah.
You could really make a cohesive block set for a custom dimension if you decide that, for example, the highlight color would be something different than yellow, like maybe cyan, like you're talking about.
Mhm.
That would be a
difficulty
great
would be-
way to make it
the
feel
difficult-
unique.
Difficulty would be in bringing the blocks between the dimensions, because then they might not match fully.
It would be,
And
but
that's so already the case in Minecraft. There's so many blocks that don't really just like endstone just doesn't match with anything. It's just kind of weird, right?
that's true. Yeah, there are a lot
that's
of
just the
blocks that
case.
just don't work. But
Because they have a different like lighting system for them, I feel like.
Mhm,
Sometimes.
mhm.
Nether bricks as well, maybe.
Yeah. What do you think about the idea of starting a data pack specifically for the purpose of expressing your art in a gameplay medium that more people will be interested in rather than just looking at it? Um, expressing your art in a gameplay medium. I mean, I guess that is what data packages do, right? They do just that is expressing your art in a gameplay medium. We're making like mobs that are shown in a gameplay medium. But if you mean something akin to like an art gallery with like a playable, let's say, aspect to it, um, I would love that. I would love anything like kind of. I generally love anything to do with tying gameplay and aesthetics together. That's why I like game design and game development so much. Um, so yeah, if you have a good idea for that, I'd probably be interested in it. So feel free to hit me up. Uh,
I
yeah,
can
and sort
think
of following from that, I guess. Oh, do you want to?
No, go on. Go on.
Yeah. Socials. What are our socials and where you can find more of our work? Um, Curious, you can go ahead with that one.
Oh, I'm so bad at this. I should be doing more of
Sorry.
socials and like portfolio work and stuff, but I just don't. If you want to talk to me, you can send me a DM, and I'm always around here on the summit. Or not always, but you know, you can catch me. I love talking. If anyone wants to talk, oh, I'm looking forward to the fireside chats later as well. That'll be a fun opportunity to talk more about these sort of topics. But for socials, you can't find me.
Yeah,
What about
for
you,
sure.
Jachro?
Yeah,
I,
we are hitting our time, but I know there's a couple questions, so I'll go ahead and call out for a last question. And then Jacker, I think I cut you off, but I just wanted to make that announcement.
For sure, yeah. Just about my socials before we do the last question. I'm in a similar boat. I don't really have socials. That's something I've been wanting to work on. But for now, just hit me up in the DMs. They're open. Uh, or you can also visit my site that's currently a work in progress and doesn't have anything on it. But stay
Same.
tuned for that. It's coolawesome.net. Um, yeah. So last question. Do you want to pick one, Curious?
I just want to make one point on the socials thing that for
Oh, go ahead.
artists, try not to get too over focused on like the job and the like performance of it. Make art because you want to, and you don't have to have the socials. You don't have to have like the systems to go through because you're doing it as a fun thing. Making it too much of a job can be like taxing. But yeah, as a
I totally
last
agree.
question,
Mhm.
maybe what do you think, Jacko? Number 1, 2, or 3 here?
I like
Bling-
2.
Yeah, 2. I'll do that then.
Okay.
What do you think of copying and editing other people's pixel art to practice, and what are good ways to do this? It can definitely be a bit of like a tightrope to walk on how much plagiarism that would be. I think it can be very useful to analyze people's art, look at people's art, and see what they do. Maybe like download their art, pick it apart, like edit it, see like how did they do this technique? Maybe they used an outer layer on a skin, which is really interesting to you. I've done that before. But it's important that you don't do that and then kind of make the art like make it come off as if it's your own. What do you like think of that, Jachro? Like how would you say that?
Yeah, so I think a very important thing to mention here is that every good artist steals. Um, it's true. I mean, everyone has their own influences, and I would be lying if I said that everything that is in my style is purely like an original decision. There are plenty of things that I've learned from other artists that were better than me or are still better than me, that I've started including in my own art, and that's just a part of developing your style. What makes art really original is putting yourself into it, putting like your own experiences and what you envision certain things to be like. So I would give advice to not be too too concerned about like copying people's styles or doing things that you think are very unoriginal, because we're at a point with art where it's kind of impossible to be original in many ways. Obviously, I'm not telling you to like trace stuff and steal art, but a part of developing your style is learning from other people and using other people's art as reference
Yeah.
to better your own style.
Yeah, for sure. I think the example of my own could be like, yeah, downloading a skin and being like, how did they do
Exactly, yeah.
how did they do this outer layer bullshit? Like, this is the stuff that I look at and I'm like, I really want to know. But I wouldn't download their skin and then edit it and then re-uploaded it for sure. I would draw my own skin with the same technique if I did that.
Yeah, yeah. In those cases, just like, yeah, just try to put something of your own into it. Like, don't just take something like completely as is. Try to like have your own vision and try to come up with an idea yourself. Well, maybe stuff like technique and like how to adjust certain shapes. That's something that you can be a bit more like, I guess, communist about.
Interesting, Georges. Well, we'll have to close out the panel there. I'm sure you can find both Kyrius and Jachro throughout the summit, and at the fireside chats for sure. But I want to share my thanks to everybody, especially with some of our tech issues. Unfortunately, we are not immune to that, but we did recover. So thank you so much for panelists Kyrius and Jachro for such an amazing presentation. This was really cooked throughout the week just because of everybody's passion for all the panels and all the booths. Everything really came together. So just want to shout that out on how quickly they put together such a quality presentation on some topics I know a lot of people are interested in. I mean, even taking a look at like pixel art and creative work in game is such a good way to get into data packs as a creative process rather than a technical process, which is really inspiring. So big thanks to everybody who attended today. We do have more events oncoming, but we're getting towards the end of Summit. I know, so sad, but it has been awesome. So we have our fireside chats coming up later today, which is going to be pretty exciting. If you haven't seen my announcements channel, we'll be kicking that off with a candid conversation with a couple people like Nice Name, Olref, and a couple other folks. So look out for that as a kickoff on the fireside chats. The fireside channel is open, so you'll be able to create a thread or just a message advertising what conversation you kind of want to start. We'll have a special fireside server with a couple seating set up in the main hall and a couple spots around the server. And we'll open up details about that when we get closer to starting the firesides. I do know that there are already a couple people planning. Like I know I'll be planning a pre-compiler fireside chat at some spot on the fireside server. So with no further ado, we'll go ahead and close the stream and close the stage. So I will see you all soon.
Thank you all for coming.
Thanks.